Okay, so good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. Back by popular demand, we have the amazing Roxane Webster, uh, top 100 MAPS coach and mega agent out in the Colorado region. And then, as many of you know, she's also our founders coach, Joanne. So I've asked Joanne to head up the call and chat with Roxane a little bit on our behalf. And of course, if you guys have any questions, I'm sure Roxane would love to have you jump in and field those questions. So thank you, Joanne. Take it away.
Thanks, Kieran, for that fabulous introduction. So, Ann, are you open now? Are they? I hear your state is open.
It is, it's interesting. They have opened us with a safer at home order, which actually in a lot of ways for realtors is more strict than the stay at home order. If we go to show a property, we have to take our temperature going in and out of the house. We have to provide protective gear for our client, and we have to clean the house after each showing. So we're kind of staying where we were before with the idea there are not these restrictions if you already have a contract on the property. So we're just staying with the routine of getting the buyer to write a contract first with a 24-hour buyer inspection contingency, which I'm actually liking a lot, because if a buyer is not willing to write a contract that they have 8 other contingencies to terminate on, including the 24-hour walkthrough contingency, are they really motivated? They're not real anyway. I think we should do this forever.
Okay, so explain that contingency then. Would they see it virtually then? They've got 24 hours to see it.
They've got 24 hours to physically go into the property. So they look at it virtually. They do all of the open house. They do all of it virtually. And then on the basis of that, they write a contract on the house with a 24-hour physical inspection contingency. And that's not like the home inspection, that's the opportunity to walk through the house. So what it does is it really restricts the people getting into that property to ones who are willing to do what it takes to get a house in this market.
So you're gonna keep that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what our attorney suggested, because he said that all of the restrictions, I'm just giving you a few. We have to, if we're going to be showing properties physically, we have to be registering our health and our temperature with the office every day that we're going to be out showing, right? Which I think may raise all kinds of HIPAA considerations, right? So really, the spirit of the order is they don't want us out too much. So we're going to go back to, even though we're allowed to show properties, if they've got all these restrictions, there are not such restrictions if we're actually under contract, because the attorney general considers that to be just a portion of doing business, of finishing the transaction for the client.
Awesome. Awesome. So we're still grateful we don't have those restrictions here. So you're keeping that. Is there anything else that you're doing now differently than what you were doing before that you're absolutely going to keep?
Yes, I would say that the remote inspections, I don't know about you guys, but here, you know, there's debate over whether or not you should go to an inspection. It's so time consuming, yet I've always found that that's such a moment of possible rapport with the client, right? That you've got nothing to do but lean in and ask the inspector how hard that is to fix if you see the blood draining from your client's face. But now what we're doing, and I love it, is that the inspector does his own thing. The last 15 minutes, we have a Zoom with the inspector, the buyer, and us, and we just walk through, and he points out the highlight reel of what the inspection was. Saves us hours of driving, hours of sitting there with the buyer, and we're absolutely going to keep that, the 15-minute inspection.
I think that is absolutely perfect, because then you can still ask those questions. Oh, the doorknob was loose. Well, what does that cost? Or what? So I love that. I'm writing that down. That's a perfect opportunity.
It's huge. And, you know, it's an easy thing to sell with the client, even if we didn't have COVID, because you can just say, hey, we find that the inspector is less likely to miss something if we're not standing there distracting him. Who doesn't want to do that?
Who doesn't? That's a beautiful script. I love that. I already have a question, but I already have a question that came up before we even got on the air. Some of us are still dealing with unrealistic sellers who know that our inventory is tight, so they want to hit the top of the market. Of course, we want to take listings. Would you say, yes, take them with built-in price reductions? I mean, we're still showing the data to support our numbers, but what are your recommendations on that?
I think that this becomes a time where we get to be really picky about sellers, right? But there's a built-in transition period where the market has moved in ways that sellers are not willing to accept. So you are going to find out in earnest who's serious, right? I think that if you do a built-in price reduction, it should be significant and it should be in a week, not in 2 weeks, right? Okay. And that I think that when you talk about when you talk about the prices, absolutely, we've got a brief moment of opportunity where we've got inventory shortage, right? The trick is to use this moment of opportunity to get under contract, not only under contract right now today, but under contract in such a way that it's likely to still close in 30 days. Because we don't know if the market is going to get flooded in 1 week, in 2 weeks, in 3 weeks, or in 2 months. And if the inventory gets flooded in 2 weeks and you're under contract at this price, the buyer's going to look around and take a walk, right? So if the price is low enough, we're not talking about bargain basement, but if it's aggressive enough that even as the market starts to turn, if that's in the next month, in the next 30 days, the buyer doesn't get spooked thinking that they've overpaid. And that strategy will still get you the best price you're likely to get for the next year.
That's a really good point, because if it does happen, we have a flood, then yeah, they are going to look around and say, well, you told me this was a good time, and then look at what's going on with the market.
That's exactly right.
So across the country with the people that you're coaching, I was just watching CNBC, and they had a realtor from Miami that just sold a $40 million property. His highest point has been $50 million. He set the record in Miami. And they were talking about people coming from New York, going out to the Hamptons, staying down here, and our price point actually continuing to be such that the luxury buyer is out there just tired of being confined, and so looking at taking their money and putting it into real estate right now. What are you seeing across the country?
We are seeing, I have a couple of clients in vacation areas, right? And as of yet, it's still strong, right? And I think for all of the same reasons. And I also suspect that in some, in some portions of the market, the forbearance agreements are not going to be an issue, right? Which is what my biggest concern is with the majority of the housing stock. If somebody skips a payment for 3 or 4 months and then they're expected to pay it all back at once, that's going to cause a problem for most of your middle class and lower middle class households. Upper middle class, if you're not good with your money, and there are plenty of people who live paycheck to paycheck with just bigger paychecks, right? I think that it resonates with me that in the luxury market, if somebody, that they're not going to need to do a forbearance agreement. So I think that we may see that whole portion is likely to be avoided, that level of misery in the luxury market. I think the idea of people fleeing urban areas into more second home, who knows, right? In Colorado, one of our biggest outbreaks to start with was in Aspen and Winter Park, right? Two of the, Aspen at least is one of the biggest luxury areas in the world. I mean, you're buying $40 and $60 million houses in Aspen. And that was one of the first hotspots that we had in the mountains. So I think that we're going to see And we always do when we're looking at a shift, a market that's just shooting in every direction, right? Everybody's trying to predict where it's going. So I just come back down to the basics again. This is probably not a housing-driven recession, but you can't drop to the type of unemployment levels we're at right now without seeing an economic repercussion from it. Nobody expects that all those people who are unemployed right now, that all of them are going to get their jobs back. The PPP is moving too slowly for a lot of small businesses, so a lot of them are likely to go under. That equals high unemployment. That equals housing problems. But it's just going to be to what extent it is. And you're right, it probably is going to be slightly insulated in the second home market or the retirement home market, because in a lot of cases with retirement homes and luxury retirement homes, they're buying it cash or close to.
Right.
So you can just sit down and write out whatever this is.
So how important is it? I mean, I look at the numbers and I post them every day. So for example, we had 41 new listings, but we had 97 go pending, which I thought was crazy in one day, in 24 hours, and 40 sold. How important is it for us to know our numbers? And when we're making those care calls, I know I was so impressed with Jessica Uglick telling me about her, the way she transitions the call. She cares about them. She says, hey, I know it's kind of crazy out there. And they say, yeah, and they kind of go to the negative. And then she said, but guess what's happening for me? And, you know, we just had this happen. I just had 2 new listings. And she gets really upbeat and takes them out of the funk. And they're going, really? In real estate, that's what's going on? So yeah. Would you agree it's really important for us to know our numbers?
We must know our numbers, right? Because it gives you the language and it gives you the discussion, right? When I see 41 new listings, 97 pended, and 40 still remaining on the market?
40 sold, 40 sold.
So
91 price decreases.
91 price decreases. Okay, so what we're seeing is still less inventory coming on the market that is selling. However, those 91 price, that number parallels our 97 pending pretty closely. It's like the buyers are saying, yeah, I know there's nothing to buy out there, and we're not going to buy that top dollar, right? So that's the beginning. Gary says a lot that you can have an economic reason for a recession, you can have a housing or a lending reason, a financial reason for recession, you can have a big event reason, or at some point you've got the buyers just digging their heels in and saying, not paying that anymore, right? So those type of numbers reflect a buyer revolt from the increasing prices in my book.
We had 15 price increases, which I always find interesting. So now what I'm doing, and I'm not taking it away from the lead gen, but what I'm doing is I'm looking at what the new listings are that went on, what kind of properties those are, what price increases happen. I'm kind of dissecting everything that's going on. What did And then we're looking too at, oh, that sold for 1.3 million, but it was at 1.5. And we're just looking at now, Mike, are you on the call? Because I think we're still finding that it's 95%, up to 97% of list. So, but we're really dissecting and segmenting the different markets. So we know under the 250, under the 4, and really doing price band comparisons so we can speak intelligently about that.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. I think that the most important, at least for me when I'm looking at pricing a house, the most important piece of data is the pendings. What is under contract, what price and terms caused it to be under contract, right? So I pull up the pending listings. I pull up all the listings. I'm looking at the listing histories. That's what I'm really dissecting, because those listing histories are going to give me an idea. Okay, was this overpriced to start? What price caused somebody to write a contract on it? We don't know what the close price is until it closes, but we do know what enticed somebody to walk into that house and write a contract on it, right? And that's the trending that I'm looking at, right? Okay. And that's, if possible, I want to be pricing to that trending, not the list price trending. If I can price to that trending, I'm getting ahead of the market.
Does everybody like raise your thumb, or what, if you understand what she's saying. Makes sense to you?
I think the message is, you know, when you're pricing your listings as they're coming on right now, you need to be priced ahead of the market so that we're not chasing it to the bottom, right? That way we're going to get our sellers top dollar. Now they may have to adjust their thinking on what top dollar is.
That's right.
But it's going to be, you know, top dollar for the market of the moment that they want to sell their home in. So, you know, we don't pick the price of the home. The seller doesn't pick the price of the home. The market picks the price of the home. It's our job to educate them about the market and position them correctly in it.
That's exactly it. And that's about what Joanne is saying, really educating yourself on the market. And for those of you who are newer at this, none of us are genius economists, right? It took me a long time to learn how to read and interpret and then explain numbers. So making some time, having these conversations as these numbers come out, I'm sure Joanne, I'm sure Tim, I'm sure Catherine are happy to help you interpret those numbers and then develop a script for explaining them, right? Joanne, we sent you the pivot script book, right?
Yes.
Excellent. There's some great pricing scripts in there that was just created by Maps. To go back to that trending point, right? So if you've got 3 comparables and they're all priced here, right? But they went under contract at this price. So once they did their first price reduction, what I'm saying is that this is the price point, not this.
Right.
Right. So, and if this is trending like this, then we want to be pricing based on the trend line of that under contract, not based on the price line of the listing. This is chasing the market down and never going under contract. This is getting ahead of the market and pricing for that trend, the under contract trend.
And then you're really going to know whether that seller is serious or not.
Absolutely. The other thing I'm telling people is, hey, you know, I've got one today. Her daughter just passed away, and she said, my husband and I really don't want to lose any money on this house. And I said, I understand that. So the discussion you and I are going to have today is what does it look like to sell it where the market is today, and what does it look like for you to keep this as a rental for 3 to 5 years? And for her, a house that they just bought 6 months ago, they're upside down on it right now. They put $30,000 in. I might be able to scoot them out without a short sale, or they're keeping it as a rental. That's the conversation. And once I've had that with her in a way that she believes me, right? That's where all the care calls and the rapport building and all of that comes in, so that when we go to have this difficult conversation, she trusts me.
So what I hear you say is, yes, we're calling to make sure they're okay, but we still have to, and I know maybe everybody's tired of me saying, but you have to dive deeper, because
Yes.
we are there to help and not just say, okay, you're well, and click.
Nope, we have to dive deeper. We are there. They view us as part of their financial success team. Unless we step into that role, we're really missing an opportunity. They'll go develop a relationship with the next realtor who will act like a pivotal part of their financial success team.
Okay. So just back to inspections, and I'm just going to share something that Greg and I saw. And I'm just going to tell everyone who lists, or you've got a buyer. When you see multiple, when you look at the history of the home and you see multiple agents have had that listing, the agent that the other agents that had the listing are able to tell you what happened with that property. They're not bound by any confidentiality. So I would say, if your spidey sense kind of picks something up, call those other agents and ask them, because if it went pending and it came back on, and it went pending and it came back on, then you're seeing a pattern, and it failed inspections. And then do you even want your client to go through the process? At least you would be educated. So we're just telling you all to put that in your toolbox. Call the agents that aren't currently the listing agents and find out the history on that house.
Usually when we have, when we've got a market that's imbalanced, right? Either the buyers are a little bit crazy and they're not as picky and they're doing whatever they can do to get it, or the sellers are a little bit crazy and they're doing whatever, you know, when you're in a real buyer's market, the sellers are doing reverse offers and offering points and so forth. It's very interesting to see this market where where all of the same things are existing. The tight inventory, the buyers who want to buy, the sellers who need to sell. It's now about finding the people who, what we're looking for now is that stomach lining, right? Which of our clients have the stomach lining where they know that they need to buy or sell, and they know that this landscape is changing so rapidly that needing to buy or sell right now is about tremendous flexibility. They need to be flexible in the closing date. They need to be flexible in inspection items. They need to be flexible if an appraisal comes in low, that seller needs to be willing to drop their price to that, or the buyer needs to be willing to, it's so much about the individual motivation of that person and that deal. There's no way to say prices on every house are dropping and buyers are getting spooked. It's like every house, every deal is always its own life form and entity, but that is more so than now. It's like usually a life form is humans. Now it's you've got a human, a zebra, and a chimpanzee each buying different houses, and you get to deal with those different life forms as transactions. So that requires flexibility from you first.
Some aliens. So let's open it up to questions. Unmute yourself and ask Rox what you always wanted to ask her, but we're maybe
Unmute your heart, unmute your heart.
Good morning, Roxanne.
Woohoo!
I like the idea that everybody needs, especially in today's market, needs to know your numbers really, really well. I mean, even coming out of 2007, 2008, we need to know our numbers then. I think it's more imperative now because we have such little inventory compared to a high amount of inventory that you have to be the consultant and let them know exactly what they need to know. So when I go, and tell me if I'm wrong or not, but when I go on a listing appointment, you know, I show them the pendings and the sold, and then when I see the actives, and I say the actives, this is the actives, but that's your competition.
That's right.
And you know, we worry more about what is sold or what is pending versus what is on the market.
That's right. That's right. Well, plus it gives you something you can do some comic relief as well, because there's inevitably going to be a house that's priced way out of range. In Colorado, I say, well, good thing we live in Colorado, because that person has obviously been smoking the hope dope. Yeah, then it gives me, but I'm looking at, and by the way, I tighten in my if at all humanly possible, I want solds within the last 30 days. Solds within the last 30 days, 60 if I have to, and then what's going under contract. I'm showing them the other data, but that's what I'm focusing on.
Thank you.
You're welcome. What else? There's lovely Catherine. Good morning. I'm getting to know all your fabulous faces.
awesome.
There
must be somebody who needs to ask a question but is afraid. You can chat it if you want. I know nobody's afraid on this.
Well, I don't have a question, but I did want to share something I saw on CNBC this morning. So this is maybe because everybody's kind of in their homes and self-quarantine, but over the last few weeks, there's been a 40% increase in online search for single-family homes, and they're seeing a lot of that coming out of metro areas. Mm-hmm. So, you know, I think a lot of these, you know, we're hearing a lot that after this all kind of settles down, we're going to have this uptick in the market. I really do think that people's attitude towards housing may have changed, especially people that are in densely populated areas that were maybe looking at making the move a few years down the road. Maybe now they're saying, well, let's just do it now. You've also got people that have been stuck in their house for the last 8 weeks looking around saying things like, man, I wish our house had this, or I wish our house had that. So you've got all those kind of things happening. So I do think that we're starting to see things happen like that report that show that people have a pent-up interest in engaging in the real estate market. So all the stuff we're talking about on these calls, like educating yourself around the market, knowing your numbers, knowing what the market's doing, being able to have, you know, a top-notch conversation with clients, those skills are really, really important to hone right now So
Mhm,
when this activity floods in, we're ready to service it.
Exactly.
That's exactly right. And also knowing that this is going to be an extremely volatile market. And volatile doesn't necessarily mean dropping. It means dropping, raising, lots of inventory, no inventory, all of it very quickly volatile. It's like the stock market has been since this thing began. So really knowing those numbers, again, that is our theme for the day. And I love what you're doing, Joanne, taking it by price point and by area, really dissecting it. There is an exercise if you are newer at this, at pricing. If you go online and you Google like Fannie Mae BPO form, and you try pricing a house using that thing, right? It is like an appraisal light. The first one you do will take you 3 hours because you keep discovering new pieces of information that you didn't pull. Oh, I guess I need the listing histories, and I need the public records, and I need, it asks you about so much detailed information about the neighborhood trending, about saturation rate. The first one that you do will make your eyes bleed, but by the time you've done 10 of those, you start thinking like an analyst. So for those of you who are newer, that's your homework. Go find a BPO form and just after you've done your prospecting and after you've done your appointments, take a few minutes every day, you know, take that hour, pour yourself a glass of water or wine, depending on your preference, and start working on that because it'll get you thinking about local environments and it'll get you thinking about pricing a house in terms of more than that, those 3 data points that we usually look at.
Awesome. Thank you. Guess we're ready to wind it up, right?
Thank you for having me. Sorry
Yeah, I
again,
think so.
I was late. Thank God I had my mobile hotspot, so we're all making adjustments.
Thank you
you,
so
Roxanne.
much.
Appreciate it. Thank you, everybody, for
Take care,
being on the
gang.
call.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everybody.
We
Have a
will
great
see
week.
you all tomorrow. We have
Learn your
Rich
numbers.
Carpentary on tomorrow.
Thanks, guys. Have a
Bye.
good one.